Okay, so this is my first blog analysis. I will be analyzing Moments of Being by Virginia Woolf, specifically in this blog, how she uses traditional female stereotypes to prove that there really shouldn't be such a thing, that womanhood isn't anything in particular. In the short story, Virginia Woolf builds two characters, Fanny and Julia, and in some ways they are so traditionally feminine. The whole point of the short story is a flower had fallen off Fanny's dress because she had lost the pin. She's wearing flowers on her clothes, and there are flowers just mentioned throughout, carnations and roses. And that's kind of traditionally girly. And the whole time she's there because she's taking a piano lesson at Julia's house. And playing piano in the parlor was something that girls traditionally did. You know, boys could have their other hobbies, but piano, that was kind of a female instrument at the time, turn of the 19th to the 20th century when Virginia Woolf was living. So in that way, they are traditionally very feminine, and Julia at one point says, the use of men surely is to protect us. She actually says that men are supposed to protect women because they're physically weaker. That's not what we believe now, but it was just what was accepted back then. And Julia's also kind of portrayed as physically weak, too. It mentions her terrible headaches, and that's why she doesn't go on the subway or eat strong food. She avoids the weather. So they portray her as frail and physically weak, as men traditionally viewed women. But in so many other ways, they are not traditionally feminine at all. Because also at that time, early 20th century, women were supposed to be kind of docile, not many opinions, but Julia especially has very strong opinions about men. At one point she says they're ogres, and while she does say men are meant to protect women, that's like her only use for them. She says she has no other use. And Fanny, too, she doesn't even think men need to protect her. She had no use whatsoever for men. Neither of these women have a man in their life. Neither of them have children. It says of Julia that she had lots of suitors, but she rejected all of them. She doesn't have kids, or ever really wanted to have kids. It would get in the way of her life. So Julia certainly had not endangered her habits. She wanted to keep her habits, like having breakfast in bed, walking down to the river whenever she wanted to, working if she wanted to, as a piano teacher when she wanted to. She wanted to make her own decisions. Besides having these strong opinions and wanting to be independent, Julia and Fanny have desires, like sexual and romantic desires. And at the time, women also, people didn't even think they had sexuality. They just laid there and thought of England. That was the old saying, like, just let him do his thing and think about England. But they clearly do. There's one point, I think, writing and talking about Julia near the end there. Julia blazed, Julia kindled, Julia opened her arms, Julia kissed her on the lips, Julia possessed her. That's, I think, fairly steamy, compared to the rest of the short story. And they kiss each other at the end. I don't know what they do after it, but they kiss each other at the end. They clearly desire each other as women, which was kind of like, what? And what's even more shocking is that it was another woman. And I think at the time, they probably would not, society probably would not have considered as lesbians women, which they were. We now can realize they were women. There's no indication they identified otherwise. The way they talk about men as a separate thing. They are definitely women, we would now think, but back then, When I read this, I started thinking about Virginia Woolf's purpose. Like, what was she trying to get across in that? And I thought she was trying to say, there's no one definition of a woman. You can be as feminine as you want. In other ways, don't be feminine. It's down to the individual, and no one fits in the feminine, masculine molds perfectly. No one does. And it seems kind of common sense now, but I think it was really progressive, maybe controversial for the time. But through her use of making these characters, Julie and Fanny, traditionally feminine with the flowers, the music, the frailty even, and then the things that are traditionally thought of as masculine, like opinions and independence and sexual desire, which proves you can be both and still be a woman. Okay.